say that about us. We like making sense of the senseless
Because that
things.
says a lot about us as a nation.
We like speculating.
We like speculating, and we like things that make us
And
happy.
we love controversy.
And we love controversy. We love things that excite our emotions, not the things that really make sense and are true to say. So that is why most of you, what is happening today, most of the trends, we complain about the right things. We talk about job creation, we talk about unemployment. But when you look at the narrative creation and what then trends about it, two worlds apart. And I ask myself, till which day we need to get to a point where we really start making the sensible things trend and not necessarily things that are sensational and emotive.
Let me ask you, who runs the narrative? Who controls this narrative?
Who controls the narrative is quite a wide question, because number one, I would say the media has the largest part to play.
I knew you were going to
The media will always control the narrative. So for as long as the media continues to love what is more emotive, unfortunately, that will continue being the narrative. We need to create a culture where we actually must have the culture of speaking things that are true, saying things that are sensible, things that are helpful, and that should be able to move out the next to the next assignment. Look at it yourself. When you look at most of the trends about where we just came from and the Gen Z issues, and we've had a lot of conversation here about that. And I see people trending all over, and I see Kenyans saying, you guy, you should be our next leader.
Correct.
And when I look at the things that person is doing, one just insulted another leader on TV, and because of that, people started saying you should be the next leader. So we are not interrogating facts. We are not interrogating the leadership. If we are saying we have a leadership problem and this has not been able to happen, can we be able to look at who has the fabric of leadership? Not who has the fabric to trend, who has the fabric to insult another, who has the fabric to just make us get excited.
But it just shows you how society is, especially when you look at the caliber of leaders that we have, the type of, like you say, the type of conversations that we have. This is what's going on in the minds of regular Kenyans. You know, maybe our standards are so low, bro.
Partly, of course, the public also has to bear some portion of that burden, because I'm on record here having said that we cannot be able to be electing leaders then come back and behave like we don't know where they came from. So of course we must be able to blame. You know, in Kenya we behave like members of parliament in parliament. We were donated. Like there's a country that donated MPs to us. There's a country that we can't elect leaders then get shocked that they're in office. We must be able to take our blunt.
Then that poses the question that are we really ready for the change that we are yearning for as a country? Because if this is a reflection of where we are right now and what Kenyans are as a society, are we really ready?
We have to ask ourselves whether we are ready for where we want the country to go, or we still just want to be emotional about things and make things. Because every time somebody tries to tell people the right thing, we seem to hate truth. We seem to hate things that are progressive. And that is our problem. And that's why we have come up with a culture where it's a tokenist culture, where even the media nowadays just feeds you with what you want to hear. They don't go the extra mile. The journalist doesn't want to go the extra mile. He just wants to feed you with what you want to hear.
You think journalists are lazy these days?
I even see, you look at the headlines and even how the headlines are framed. We have sexualized the headlines. We have made... So that is how low we are sinking, because now we are now not competing on being truthful, we are competing on pleasing the public. And for as long as you are a leader, the reason why you are the media and you are at the front is you must lead the narrative, not necessarily by telling us what we want to hear, but by saying what is true. And that is how we are able to shape the society in the right way. That even the people in leadership should be able to take the country to the right place, not necessarily where we feel it should be. Because sometimes leadership is about making the tough decisions. Some of the decisions are not necessarily popular. People will not love those kind of decisions, but sometimes you know that this is the decision that is going to take this country to the next level. So we need that kind of leadership, whereby somebody is able to see the direction that the country needs to be, and you simply take the country to that direction, not necessarily because it is the popular thing to do. You know, it's like growing up. All of us loved soda, chips, and sweets.
Yes.
But if our parents knew at what point we need it and what point we don't need, it doesn't matter how much you cry, but the parent knew that when you continue taking soda, you'll get tonsils. So the parent will protect you from the tonsils that you're not seeing. And that way, that is the right parent. But what is happening in Kenya today is that when the public says they want soda, it's more soda and more soda. And more and more.
Yeah, it's almost as if we are pleasure chasers.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I love the choice of words.
Exactly. You know, just gives you, we like that feeling
adrenaline.
Of, the adrenaline
that comes from it.
Yes.
So let me ask you something. You know, there's been a lot that's been happening in the country ever since, I guess even during the weekend, even last week, since we last spoke. What has stood out for you in the recent past? A couple of days ago, you know, maybe even yesterday, today?
I think one of the things that really I saw and I loved it was the move by the current Cabinet Secretary of Treasury when it came to the reduction of a few taxes here and there. I thought that was quite some work in the right direction. He was really trying to stand as per the promises that he was able to make. But largely the country has been in a very political mood, especially in regard to the politics of the mountain, politics of Mount Kenya.
Politics of Adani, the Adani
politics
deal.
of the Adani deal. It has also been very heavy. There has also been the politics of the travel. We have had a lot of talk about the president traveling, and as well as just like I told you before, again, even in the politics of the travel of the president, you will see how it's reported, and there is less about the content and more about what is dramatic about it, like the flying president. You know, that's nice, it makes it catchy, but are we really interrogating the fact? Because for us to move the country forward, we must be able to interrogate the facts. We must be able to sit down and say, okay, the president went to German, what exactly came out of this? Is it beneficial to the country? I wish such things would be trending, where we would be discussing, we think this was not beneficial and this was beneficial. That way, I feel like we'd be moving towards it. But just to answer your question on what came out, I've been able to see those three come out. And I've also seen the entertainment scene really been, I've seen the Kamba Festival, I've seen the other festival. I think the creative space has also been very active, and I think we must be able to really applaud the efforts of the content creators and just the creatives of the country.
And you know, I like how you're very diverse when it comes to what caught your attention, not just about issues and politics. But actually, in the previous hour, we were just talking about whatever happened at the Multimedia University, where we saw students rioting because they said there isn't enough water in their school, poor Wi-Fi. And we know, even because I really don't like how people were looking down upon this whole idea of Wi-Fi, saying, that's not even enough for you guys to protest. But we understand how, especially for young Kenyans, Wi-Fi, internet access really makes a lot of things possible for them. But then again, there was a clip that was trending where we saw some cops.
I don't know if you've seen that.
I don't know whether you saw that.
I haven't been able to see that.
They were really, what's the word I should use? I mean, they use excessive force when dealing with some protesters, specifically some young Kenyan, probably a student over there, and then they threw a tear gas canister on his face. He pushed it on the side and it exploded. So you can just imagine if it exploded right next to his face. And bear in mind, this same student had a broken leg. Now, we're just talking about the conduct of police officers when they're dealing with protesters, crowd management. I mean, is it a lack of the right training? Is it just because I'm tired of people saying, it's not just all officers, just a few characters here and there. What is your assessment when you keep on seeing every time, even previously when we saw JKA workers protesting, we saw how violent some officers were when dealing with protesters. What is your assessment with how our police officers go about crowd control?
Well, first of all, I do not agree with the narrative about it's just a few, because we don't need many for there to be chaos. We don't need many. It's just it can just be one officer, and there can be several lives lost. Remember, we are talking about people who we have enabled constitutionally to have the monopoly of violence. So they have the guns, they have all these. So it takes the carelessness of just one, and then the mistake is too detrimental. So first of all, the police, and this has continued, I think, now for a while.
Correct.
Where we have continued to raise questions over police brutality and just how their conduct in handling the protests. And I think it's high time that the Inspector General just takes this thing very, very seriously, very, very seriously. And one, if it calls for a retraining of the police unit, that should be able to be done. It also calls for them to check about their mental health, because I also want to come from a place where I want to understand that the police are also human, just like all of us. And sometimes you're also dealing with a very frustrated lot of people. So we need to also constantly check on their mental health before even assigning them some of these responsibilities, so that the people who are on the front line are the most responsible of the group, so that we don't end up with such kind of hazards. But be that as it may, it also calls upon us, when we are going out to exercise our constitutional rights, we must also be able to stick within those dictates. We have excesses that we are not necessarily supposed to go to. It's not necessary. For instance, when you are demonstrating about loss of water, what is the business of insulting the police? What is the business of calling them names? What is the business of calling them not educated? Yeah, I'm not saying those students did that, but I have been able to see this happen before. So sometimes we also stretch the extent of sympathy and whatever from these policemen too much. It doesn't make it right for them to overreact, because they are the professionals here. But what we can do, we also just need to do it. We don't need to stretch them to extraordinary levels, because again, they are just human, and remember, they have the weapons of violence.
You've mentioned the Inspector General on that. That's police issue as well. You mentioned the Inspector General, and just in recent times we've also seen what's happening in matters him and court. We have him being in contempt of court, and now we saw the whole story take a new fresh turn, where the said justice has been his security has been pulled out or withdrawn. Are we also maybe looking at a force that is led with impunity and maybe political backings, and is that the right way to move forward?
It is always a very dicey thing when you are commenting matters judiciary, because every other time when you want to really give a comment on matters judiciary, you are told the judiciary is independent and all this kind of thing.
Yes.
But my personal opinion on this is that I think we over-politicize things in this country. In as much as I do not agree with the conduct of the Inspector General and his lack of respect for the court order, I also find some judgments quite political, because, again, I look at it, government, the judiciary and everything, it's one government. So we have things that I don't really believe should really be able to be brought to us, like one arm of government is busy discussing with the other arm in court and all these. At the end of the day, we become dramatic, and everyone is looking for mileage. So at the end of the day, the judiciary is also looking for mileage. The other arm is also looking for mileage. Then the parliament is also... Sometimes we just have to have a place where the leadership of the country can sit and agree on something.
Correct.
Without it always being about somebody pulls the country to one extreme, and then there is always the hanging card that is always being dangled to us, that we are independent. Then the other person also does something weird, because even the Inspector General's office with the withdrawal, remember, it's also independent.
Correct.
The judiciary with their judgment, it's also independent. So I think at some point, sometimes we just have to sit down as a country and agree on a way forward without being dramatic, without everyone trying to be popular. I told you when we were starting that we are a country of trends. Nowadays, everyone wants to trend, and everyone wants to be famous, including people who work in places where trending and being famous is not important. Everyone now wants to be famous in this country.
That's an interesting way of putting it,
and so that is the problem, where people sometimes are making decisions, not necessarily because they are the right decisions, but maybe because they are
not even famous. For public interest,
not
just
even
because the public,
not even for public interest, just because this is the famous thing to do, and so that is the biggest unfortunate thing that we're having.
So now, also one of the latest conversations in the country is obviously about the Adani deal. So my question is very simple over here. When you look at that deal, the Adani deal, which apparently now I saw the CS of, was it Energy? Talking about how this thing is going to go through. Are we making the right economic decisions in terms of PPPs, public-private partnerships? Do you think we're going about it the right way?
I think what is happening wrong, because there's this case. First of all, there was the SGR contract that never came public. And then there were several other contracts. I remember when CS Murkomen, before they got elected, promised that the first thing out of business, he'll be able to make some of these contracts public. And I think that's where we begin. That's where the first problem is. Most of our reactions to most of our contracts, we react from what has just been fed outside there. We don't know what is the official communication. We don't know who is doing it. So we don't know who is actually saying the truth and who is spinning the narrative. So first of all, in my view, government needs to come out very clearly so that when we are reacting from a place of information. Because as it stands now, when I look at the Adani deal and all the other deals, we are reacting from pieces of information from some Senator Onyonka. We are reacting to some piece of information from another person. There is no official government position. So we first of all need the official government position on everything. Once we have the official government position, then we can be able to talk about, is this right or wrong?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we are just advancing more and more propaganda into it, because I'll also fuel it from the angle that I wish. And, remember that just the way I told you that in the beginning, our interest as a country in truth is very limited. Most of the time, we talk about what is popular at the time.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to remember that Honorable Wycliffe Oparanya, with all due respect, before becoming the CS, told us that the Hustler Fund was one of the most useless ideas. It was not progressive. In fact, they urged that people should not pay.
Yes. I remember.
You remember? Then after becoming cabinet secretary, this is a person who told us that if there is an idea that he thinks is revolutionary, is the idea of the Hustler Fund. So then the question becomes, we speak, that's why I'm telling you, we speak for the sake of what does the public want to hear at that particular time. What can just make me famous for the time? And that is the unfortunate bit that we have. So most of the time when I listen to our leaders, especially our elected leaders, I fail to really understand whether I should trust them or that is what is convenient at the time.
Correct.
So even on the Adani deal, I fail to know whether when I listen to Senator Onyonka, I don't know whether I should trust him or that is what is convenient at the time, because I don't know what will be said tomorrow. So the first thing we need to do so that we can have the right reactions is that we need official government positions.
Yeah.
And that is where the office of the government spokesperson comes in.
Correct.
Because my problem has been that the office of the government spokesperson is more reactionary.
Wow.
It keeps waiting for something to happen, then reacts to it.
Interesting.
You wait for something to happen, then you react to it.
Yeah.
But you see, as an official government spokesperson, we are supposed to set the agenda of the government.
It's true.
So that the rest of everybody, including the media and everyone, reacts to the official position of the government. But when the official position is given by someone else, so then it becomes propaganda. Then you also come and spin within that propaganda.
I like how you said what happens is we usually react to bits of information. That's quite interesting how you put it. But there's some information that I'm also reading over here. This is from the East African.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, according to Heidenberg research, a short seller, or trading firm that bets against company shares, claimed in January 2023 that the Adani Group had engaged in long-running stock manipulation and accounting fraud that made it the largest con in corporate history, bro.
True.
That's huge. And so my question is, why would the president decide to work with somebody who has a tainted image?
That's true. I read that report, by the way, myself, by Heidenberg Research.
Yeah.
And also the response by Adani.
Yeah.
And Adani tried and really dismissed the report. It leaves us in limbo, because now you have one extreme end of information and another extreme end of information. But then the question is, already this is what would be called a tainted firm. Why would we work with it? But again, you look at it, and again, the same Adani is responsible for the building of the airport in China? Is it one of the most celebrated airports?
Yeah,
I think
apparently
in China. So you see, for us to have a conclusive debate about something, we must look at it holistically, because you look at most of the people who are purely just against government would quote that research in only that bit. Now the other bits about what Adani did in China, and we're talking about the airport here. Now we are also talking about a situation where we have complained about the leaking roofs at JKI. This is the kind of country I'm telling you about. We have complained about the leaking roofs at JKI.
Yeah.
We have said how we live in a pathetic country. We have said how the CS is doing nothing about it. We have said how the Kenya Kwanza administration is not taking care of the airport. On their first attempt to do something about the airport, we are again on the other side. again saying how it is, in fact, we don't want that deal. In fact, some people, I saw there was an argument that why can't they build another airport? Why are they insisting on JKIA? This is what I call sensational things that will happen in this country. Why can't we have a substantive conversation and say, if they have to do this, what is the cost? Do we think this cost is real or manipulated? So that we are moving towards getting to an end.
Do we have job security for our Kenyans?
Exactly. Now, those are the kind of conversations that we'll be having. But now, the issue is this. People in the opposition, their interest is that in that conversation, government must lose. And the ones in government are that in that conversation, government must win. So at the end of the day, everyone is only pulling in their direction and nobody is pulling in the direction of truth.
Right.
We need to start pulling this country towards the direction of truth and what is beneficial. We have things like an airport that should not be about opposition and government.
Yeah.
Things like airport should just be about what makes sense. Can we just agree on this and this makes sense? When you go to the US, there are issues that the Democrats and the Republicans agree on, and they are able to say, on this one, let this one move this way. But we are in a country where I usually ask myself, is it true to imagine that there is no government has ever done anything that opposition finds helpful? Because I have not seen a situation in Kenya where opposition has ever said that is good.
See the broad-based government.
So that is not opposition, because that is now a coalition.
That's true. Yo, but hold it right there.
That is mutual interest.
All right, so it's 8:30 right about now. Guys, we have Advice Mundalo. Very sharp guy, man. He's the Jubilee Youth League chair, and we're talking about fact-checking Murima. Now we're getting into local politics.
Yeah, the Murima.
Now, by the way, guys, we're actually live, yeah? We're live on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as on YouTube at SpiceFM.ke, and on Facebook at SpiceFM.ke, at DJ10 Kenya, at Matara, and Advice.
Yeah.
There's talk of impeaching the DP, man. This thing is rife on the media, mainstream media, internet, in the bars, in the churches. Even young guys are talking about this in schools.
Oh, yes. That's how political we are.
You know what I mean? And Kimani Chungwa has asked the president to shake off the rattlesnake. Toa hiyo kitu kabisa. At the same time, I've seen a different angle to this thing. Kenyans are saying, especially Gen Zs, young guys are like, wait, my guys, don't be distracted. This thing is all a hoax. What? These guys have to go home.
We have to remain true to the course.
Yo, cuz, I love you, bro. Yo, so is this actually a distraction?
At some point, I'm tempted to ask which cause? Which cause are we remaining?
What do you mean, which cause? Liberation, man.
Revolution, man.
Because I think at some point that cause only remained a word that we keep talking about. But be that as it may, first of all, I think it is a very unfortunate scenario that in this time and era, especially with what we have just come through as a country, we would be talking about impeachment claims. It would be more progress at this time. You know, it's less than 2 months since there was the uprising. We would now be talking about work. And we would be talking about how much work people are putting in. But unfortunately, we are in this space where now we have to discuss impeachment. I have not seen any formal motion tabled, of course, in Parliament, and I know that they came back from recess just today. So I haven't been able to see that. I don't know whether it will be able to come. But giving it a political dimension, I first of all do not think it is the right time for such a conversation in the country. It will be able to basically just tear the country apart because we are a highly political country. So I don't think we are within that right time that conversation should be there in the first place. I think we should be more focused now on delivering to duty than basically talking about the impeachment. And I would also just want to look at it like, what is the function of a deputy? And I think in this country, we just have to make people understand the functioning of deputies, because I think we got it wrong in the Constitution, my opinion. I don't know what's yours. I think the position of deputies needs to go back to being appointive.
Oh, interesting. Why did you say that?
Because most of the drama that happens even in the county is about deputies. So we end up spending a lot of time not in the county. People are not working. They're basically dealing with the issues of the deputy. We have had a deputy, I don't know if it's in this current regime, or I think the former in the former regime, where a deputy was living outside Kenya. and he earned for 5 years. So look at that waste of money.
Yeah.
Because we are paying someone who is literally not there.
Yeah.
Now, you go to most of these counties.
You're talking about the deputy governor?
The deputy governor, yes.
Yeah.
Deputy governor, who was literally an absentee deputy governor, but he was earning. Now, you go to most of these county governments, and I can assure you, most of these county governments, some deputies don't even have offices.
Yeah.
Because they are frustrated by the governors.
I saw right, go ahead.
So I ask myself, then why can't we go back to the model where you just appoint a deputy?
Appointing, I guess, it's not popular because clearly there's no security. The president can just decide one day, you know what, you're out.
But that's the whole reason you are a deputy.
Yeah?
That's the whole reason you are a deputy.
Really?
Because if we must be able to have people to be held responsible for something, it's my opinion that we must be able to have one person to lay responsibility on.
All right, so be that as it may, I saw a certain individual from the Kenya Kwanza coalition saying, you've never seen the deputy president launching any projects. He didn't even talk about that. He's never been talking about the Adani deal. Yeah. He's not talked about the university funding model. Yeah. He's not talked about youth unemployment. Yeah. He's not talked about, the recent fires. This guy, what is he doing? Just talking about Murima. So he should just be out. You're not really even the principal secretary to the president. So is that a viable argument?
It is a viable argument because that person anchors his argument on service delivery, which is basically the whole reason why a government is elected. So when someone argues in terms of service delivery and saying these are the issues, because the issues he has talked about unemployment, he has talked about youth issues, those are literally issues. So it's issue based. I agree with that kind of reasoning.
Yeah.
Because we have created a scenario whereby we have a president and deputy who are tied at the hip by our constitution. So, and the governor and the deputy who are also tied at the hip. So there's nothing this boss can do about the deputy. And we have created a culture where the person who should be blamed must always be the boss. Yeah? The underdog will always be safe. So it can frustrate you sometimes, but because you are the one who look like you are the one who has a bigger burden, it will always be like that. That's why I say, why can't we be able to relook the constitution? Because the work of a deputy by the constitution is purely to be a principal assistant.
Right.
Principal assistant of the president, principal assistant of the governor. So at what point do you disagree? That's what I keep asking myself. So my view is that the only reason that would make you disagree is when I know that there's nothing you can do about it. Otherwise, why would we disagree when my work is purely to be your principal assistant? As a principal assistant, I am told tomorrow you wake up, you go to SpiceFM. That's what I do.
Yeah.
The other day you do this, that's what I do. So at what point do we disagree? I tend to think that the only reason we can be able to disagree is when I believe I am at a point of advantage, despite the fact that I am just a principal assistant. And that's why I feel like instead of all that hulabaloo, why don't we just go back so that we can be able to have one person to blame? When you are at SpiceFM, there can only be one head of radio.
That's true.
Right? We can't have a head of radio and an assistant head of radio, and this assistant head of radio cannot be told anything by this head of radio.
But according to history, I remember, I guess we all know whatever happened to Jaramogi.
Yes.
People say he had ideological differences with his boss, Jomo Kenyatta, right? Yeah. And because of that, he decided he did the right thing, the principal thing, and he resigned. Do you think right now, if at all Ruto has ideological differences with the deputy president, maybe it's safe for the deputy president to then resign as opposed to being embarrassed and talking about rattle the snake? You know what I mean? So would you advise him, for example, to resign?
Because resigning is a matter of principle. If you really believe that you are not in sync, in principle, with your boss, that has always been the right thing to do. That has always been the right thing to do. Anytime, when you are not in sync, that's what you do.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel like as it stands now, what is happening is more political than ideological.
Okay.
Is more political than ideological. And I fail to agree that the deputy president is being, what is the word you used? There is a word that you used, like he's the one who is being made to look bad and whatever. Yeah. That's why I started by saying, it is a matter of when you are the underdog. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter. For as long as public perception will always be able to favor you. It's like when he finds himself in a fight with you, it doesn't matter even if he begins the fight. I can assure you, when the public comes, they'll say you are the one who was wrong.
It's true.
Just because you are bigger.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. But what about, okay, hypothetically speaking, say they remove Gachagua from this conversation.
Yeah.
Successfully, they do away with him, maybe through an impeachment. He does the principal thing and resigns.
Yeah.
Does this now make the president govern better?
I don't know, because it will be purely, I told you this problem is purely political, not administrative.
Yeah, then let's look at it politically.
So politically, when you get rid of the deputy in an impeachment, what does it do? What is the most likely thing for him to do? The most likely thing for him to do is to go back and galvanize the Mount Kenya. He has enough time now. Yeah? And that will be the only thing that this person will be doing throughout. Is that good enough for governance? I don't think so. Because there will be noise after noise after noise. Yeah? Because there will be... And then look at the process of now getting another deputy. Again, it will be murky politics.
I can imagine.
You can imagine that process alone. And we only have 3 years of government.
Yeah, man.
That is, I feel like that is a very unnecessary struggle for us to get ourselves into. We would be able to be focusing now more on what can be delivered than focusing on these because I can assure you, once you go political and the politics starts, it never ends. Once you start the process of impeaching the deputy president, that we will take a political tone down the drain to the end.
Till 2027.
on the same matter, actually, it's very funny. The president has, in recent times, and I think on Sunday, mentioned, and some would say was addressing his deputy, saying that it's a bit too early for campaigns.
Yeah.
And do you think it's double standards coming from the president, given that he himself was in a similar situation a while back with his boss 2 years after getting to office?
Yes.
Does that now sound as double standards coming from the president, or he actually does make sense?
One thing I agree with what he says, that it's actually too early for campaigns. The same way I agreed with that statement
when it was first uttered.
Yeah, when it was first uttered. I agree with both of those statements.
Yes.
That it's actually too early for the politics. So going forward, because again, we do not really... You see, when we are hell-bent on the past, we can't secure the future. So just because maybe a mistake or something happened in the past doesn't mean we must stick to that to the end.
Correct.
If it's too early for campaign, it's too early for campaign, whichever the time.
Yeah.
So because look at it, every weekend. In fact, nowadays, it doesn't wait for weekend. You are in the media, you know this. From Wednesday, we are purely on a campaign spree.
Yeah. All
the way to the weekend. And I feel, at what point are we going to work?
Yeah.
Because the cabinet secretaries should not be busy moving up and down in funerals and all that on political statements and political stuff. We should be able to work. And so I agree with that statement, that it's actually too early for campaigns.
I want to ask you something. You know, you're so sober, bro. Like, I really hope one day you're going to be our president.
Yes.
Mutulie, tuchape kazi. You know what I mean? But at the same time, well, everything is local, bro. Politics is local. The deputy president's absence during the function in Nyeri, where the president was in attendance, made a serious impression in the minds of Kenyans and, of course, citizens of Nyeri County, right? I'm going to ask you a general question, you guys. Do you think Kenyans actually care?
About his attendance or about his lack of attendance?
Yes. Do you think Kenyans care, bro?
I would tell you Kenyans actually care. That's why it trended. If they didn't, we would not even have noticed it. But you saw, in fact, most Kenyans don't even know what the president talked about. Most Kenyans don't even know where the president was. But they know one thing, the deputy president was not there.
It's true.
So that shows you the percentage of care. We are a highly political country. That's why when you started this conversation, you said it's being discussed everywhere, even in primary school. Yeah, that's how political we are. And we pay the highest attention.
When I say care, I say care in the sense of, like, do we feel sorry for him? Are we concerned about his welfare, his part in the coalition, in the government? Do we feel like he's being mistreated? Care in that sense? Do you think? They
do, because emotional voting is very ripe in Kenya.
Yeah, it's true.
We have had very many instances where we have gotten ourselves leaders that were just emotional about. And the easiest card in politics, when you're looking for the vote, when you can get the emotional vote,
man,
go for that. it is the easiest vote to convince.
That's what actually happened to the former deputy president, who's our president now.
Yeah, emotions sell.
Yeah.
Emotions
People
sell.
feel sorry for him.
People feel sorry for you. Sometimes not necessarily because you are right. Yeah?
What?
Sometimes you would be the problem.
Yeah.
But you are the underdog.
Yeah.
For as long as you are the underdog, people always believe. Like when the deputy president does not show up to the president's function, I wonder why our imagination must be that he was frustrated. Because I'm asking myself, there was his seat there. Openly, there was the seat there.
Maybe that was politics, man.
But our
Because it has happened before.
You see, now they're controlling our narrative. They're controlling what we're thinking.
I agree with you.
Atiweke yo kiti hapo so that they think it's the DP who missed it by himself. It's by his choice.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I'm also just trying to say, why not giving the other side of thought a benefit of doubt?
Very true.
Well?
Very true.
Why are we hell-bent on believing that he was frustrated and not also believing that he didn't show up?
I like how you put in this, bro.
Yeah? Because if you invite me today for this show and I don't show up, who is to blame?
See, maybe you. It could be us.
How come when it's me, you guys are quick to say it would be me?
It could be us.
It could be you.
Cheers!
Hey.
I love this. Let me ask you something. Yo, so apparently, there's some folks who have decided to cut ties with the deputy president regarding Gachagua, and now they're endorsing the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki. Yes. Now they've cut ties. Basically, these are people who are saying they're representing the Mount Kenya East region, and some of these folks...
Just about 48 of them.
Yeah, so...
about 48 members of parliament.
Those are 48 members of parliament, and then we have some 500 elders from Meru, Embu, Tharaka-Nithi. All of these guys have endorsed Kithure Kindiki. Now, what does this mean? Does the president still control the ground around the mountain, central region? Because he's always told us that he's the kingpin there, technically.
He's actually not told us. He was actually endorsed by the deputy president himself when they moved from here, and they said they stopped in Githurai and did some cultural whatever, and then they went all the way to Nyeri, and they themselves, in fact, the deputy president who declared the president the kingpin of the Mount Kenya region.
Oh, okay.
It was him who did it.
Yeah.
So right now, this jostling, and I'm then now wondering, since when did the president stop being the kingpin? Because now, who are these people everyone is endorsing? Because they say it themselves that the kingpin is the president. But then looking at it now from a local politics perspective, I think when you are in charge of a team, when the team starts to get disgruntled, when the team starts to get divided, I think the first person we must be able to blame is the one who was in charge of the team. Before we look at why the other people went whatever direction they went, you at one point... you held all of them and you are in charge of the team. We must be able to ask the fundamental question, what really happened to that team? Yeah, because at one point there was no issue and everybody seemed to be okay with under the wings of the deputy president. Now at this time when 50 members of parliament is not an easy number. If you want to know that 50 MPs are many, just remember that NAC doesn't have an MP. And you'll know that 50 members of parliament are very many members of parliament.
Correct.
For them, and these are people who are not just... I cannot be able to say they do not have a sane mind. These are leaders.
Correct.
These are leaders with their own mind. These are leaders of repute. These are leaders who have gotten to the level of being elected by the people. For them to come together and say something is wrong, we must not dismiss them quickly. We must be able to interrogate and understand what exactly is the issue. And I think that's where the president should be able to come in and just help to quell those the waters and those temperatures. Because again, even in the endorsement of Kindiki, of course, we've all been able to see the leadership traits that Honorable Kindiki has been able to espouse. He's not a confrontational guy. He would not pass for some of those guys who run into controversy here and there. So he passes more as a very calm person. Even during the peak for the deputy, who would be the deputy president at the time, you remember his name really came up. And most of the parliamentarians and most of the candidates then felt that they wanted him.
But what's the reasoning behind saying, Kindiki is going to be our new leader, he'll give us direction, yet he's not an elected leader?
That's where I'm actually going, because this is not something that is beginning today. That's why I'm trying to give you the historical perspective, that even before we have seen an element of the leaders of Mount Kenya want to coalesce around Honorable Kindiki. it is not happening today. Now, at some point, they felt like he would be the right pick for deputy president, and then it don't work out that way. But that rumor came out, and heavily so, and they have spoken about it themselves. Now, this is another time when again such a thing is happening, and people are actually endorsing him. There must be something about him that he does right that must be interrogated in terms of there must be people cannot just leaders in their own mind cannot just wake up and want to endorse somebody. There must be a reason to it. But even as they do that, we must also come from the understanding that Kindiki is a minister. He is a cabinet secretary, so he's supposed to be a political. He's not supposed to be taking political sides. And that's why I've also not had him comment about
should he make a comment and just
about the issue, because once he comments about it again, it becomes purely political. Even if he says no, I am not, it becomes another, it takes a whole tone of political narrative. So it's a balancing act. We must be able to appreciate that there's something Kindiki does right that wants to coalesce leaders around him, because we can't blame you for making us want you to be our leader.
Exactly.
You see? We cannot be able to do that. But we must also be able to look at these people had a leadership before. What really happened within that leadership? Where did they... because at some point we used to see the deputy president walking around with drones of members of parliament from Mount Kenya, and all of them were walking around with him, and all of them were happy. What exactly?
What changed?
What changed, and what really happened?
Yes, I want to bring in the former president into this whole Mulima story. Our deputy president has been quoted before saying that he acknowledges our former president as a kingpin of the Mulima. Do you think it's perhaps time maybe he gives his say or weighs his opinion on the current situation happening right now, given the fact that he's also been quiet from active politics? Do you think his say is also very detrimental in what happens matters Mulima?
That is more his decision to make. But as it stands, I have also seen, and the deputy president has come out and talked about what he should be able to say and what he should not be able to say and all that, and what his stand is. Actually, there was a meeting that the Gema held and endorsed him as the kingpin. Of course, there was Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, Martha Karua, and a whole lot of other leaders who were able to have, it was called the Limuru Three. And they were able to say Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta is now the leader of the region. He did not comment about it. He said nothing about it. But as it stands, as an elder of the country, I think it's not even about just reducing him to Mount Kenya. He is a person whose word really means something for the entire country. It's not just about Mount Kenya. So it's not about him coming out to talk about Mount Kenya issues. I think that would be reducing him more into a clan leader. That is a national leader. He stands a lot of respect in the whole of this country. We always see the excitement anytime he is seen in public. So I think it is a matter, it's not just about the mountain matter, but basically about the entire country. There comes a time when he must be able to really come out and give us his opinion on different matters. But again, you also have to understand that he can't do it so expressly, because we must also respect the reality that the country has a president. You see, just because you are a former CEO of Standard Group doesn't mean you must start calling journalists on air.
Wow, I like that. Thank you so much for coming through, my brother. Advice Mundalo, Jubilee Youth League Chair. We'll be talking about, just the general state of the nation, but importantly, fact-checking the mountain. And exactly what the future lies, what the future is like for our Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. Asante sana, my brother. Advice Mundalo.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure coming along and having this conversation. And as you said, I'm usually I try to be all round in terms of, especially on the youth agenda. We must be able to ensure that the young people have the jobs and all that. And even as it stands now, we are really trying to work around something called the Myogenic African Talent Academy.
What's that about?
Where we are just trying to put together the potential of the talents in Kenya so that we have better exposure.
Correct.
Because we've realized that we have a lot of talent in Kenya, but the talent does not convert. It does not convert into monetary value. So we have realized that there is a gap where our talented people and our creatives need to be trained on very many skills, including just financial literacy and all that, and just how to handle themselves professionally. So that once they are able to acquire these skills, then we can expose them to the right market. Because the unemployment problem in Kenya is real. The unemployment crisis is real. And we cannot just depend on government and bash government every day. We must be able to do something about it. And I traverse this country, I go to the deepest of the villages and the sub-counties, and one thing is constant. You will find a performer. You will find somebody who can perform somewhere. So if we are able to get our creative industry right, then we'll be able to solve a huge chunk of the unemployment problem.
All right. Good job, man.
Thank you very much.
Once again, Advice Mundalo right there, Jubilee Youth League Chair. It's all about fact-checking the mountain. Easy. When we come back, I guess in the next hour, we're still going to cruise the internet.
Yeah, we're going to cruise the internet some more. I'll be talking to you about how Portugal wants to honor Cristiano Ronaldo.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. I will also give you some facts. It's all about what the facts. Right now, 7 minutes to 9. Good evening.
Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM.